Hey, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast on a Monday afternoon, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. It's never ordinary at Bet365, and it's never ordinary with a man who's got a new fade, Zach Berman, checking in on a Monday. How you doing, ZB?
I'm doing well. Excited for the show. A lot to talk about today, a lot to talk about this week. We're covering the best team in football, or at least the team with the best record. Well, actually, best team in the NFC, I would say right now, or trending in that direction. Buffalo Bills are a darn good football team as well. But regardless, we're covering a 12-2 football team that has a franchise record, 10-game winning streak, and that has 3 games ahead of them against opponents that I think they're decidedly better than.
I would say so. Do you think they're going to be the number 1 seed right now, hanging on the table?
Good question. Yes, I've been saying the Lions all along, and we'll get to it. These Lions
injuries are too many injuries.
Yeah, these Lions injuries are concerning, and that schedule is tough. And I don't see the Eagles stumbling in these final 3 games. So if it's a matter of will the Lions lose one of these last 3 games, if I had to guess it, I would say yes. And in that case,
that is at Chicago next week, at San Francisco the week after that, and then home against the Minnesota Vikings in week 18.
Yeah. So when I look at it like that, I say, now look, this could all be moot if the Eagles stumble against Washington next week, which is conceivable. Washington's a 9-win team. The Eagles are going down there after an emotional win. But the Eagles have answered the bell.
During the owner, of course.
I don't know Joshua Harris. I think he's done a better job than the previous owner.
Yeah,
right. I think
Mussolini.
I'm just saying they're a 9-5 team right now. I think he made 2 good hires in Washington so far, and we'll see how that develops. But I look at what the Eagles have done during these last 10 weeks, and as I said, I thought they were going to split Baltimore and Pittsburgh. So I thought the conversation about the 1 seed wasn't really applicable. The fact that they've run the table here to get to this point, and Detroit loses to Buffalo, yeah, I don't want to say 50-50. I would have to look at what the actual odds are, but I think there's a real good shot that the Eagles are the 1 seed.
Yeah, and for all the reasons that we've talked about, I mean, you think about this potential matchup where it does feel like the season has been leading to like a showdown in the NFC Championship game between the Eagles and the Lions. I do think that it's possible that the Packers or Vikings could nip one of them, but you just think about the matchup and what a difference it makes if that game is played in Detroit inside with their fans versus in Philadelphia outside with these fans.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. I think Detroit's a team that's built for the Dome, and I think we saw last year in that Rams-Lions playoff game the advantage that those Detroit fans present. Conversely, I think the Eagles will be so tough at home. I think Detroit coming here would be particularly difficult. Jared Goff in this setting, I know that's a tough-minded team that can run, although without David Montgomery or potentially without David Montgomery, that affects it. That said, you always want home field. The first-round bye is such an advantage. That said here is round 2, it's actually a disadvantage being the 1 seed because Green Bay is tough, right? And so I would much rather the 4-5, the 4-5 winner than Green Bay.
Of course, presuming that Green Bay beats whoever the 3 seed is,
which actually isn't a given because the Rams are playing real good football right now too, and Tampa Bay's rolling. I mean, Tampa Bay had a huge win yesterday, so yeah, these are all.
I do think the middle of the NFC is looking a little bit better than maybe it did a couple weeks ago.
You're right, but I think Green Bay is a legitimate threat, and I think it's a team that can play well on the road in cold weather.
Yeah, and then you just think about like if you do get to that Detroit game, like the Ben Johnson Vic Fangio matchup. Like that's the kind of stuff that gets the football nerd in you really coming out and getting excited.
Yeah, CJ Gardner-Johnson would be so fun that week, right? Like, again, you don't want to sound like a football coach and say 1 week at a time, one game at a time. You can't win. You can't get the NFC playoffs or the NFC championship without winning the next game. That said, we're at that point. It's December 16th. You start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You can start thinking that way, and these possibilities are especially interesting this year.
And listen, as you said, this game on Sunday will be no gimme. Washington has a lot to play for as well, and this is the first time all season the Eagles will play a team for the second time, so we will see what kind of adjustments they make in Washington. But it is like the predicament of the team after yesterday's performance to do 5 days of shows. Like, they sort of answered all the questions. Like, there's not a lot to complain about right now. And we'll find out what the injury status is for a bunch of the guys who got nicked up yesterday. But so far, early signs are that there's nothing super concerning. I can't get over how impressive a performance it was yesterday, given everything that led into the game and the ways that they answered it. And as we talked about, the only time all season they're going up against an actual good defense, a defense that was inviting them to pass, to be fair.
Sure.
But boy, did they answer the bell.
Absolutely. And I think there's an important framing that needs to go on here, because I don't think yesterday was if I'm speaking from the Eagles, we proved you wrong game, even though that's the way like Jalen Hurts was framing it. Like, we love to prove people wrong. I actually think it was we proved you right game. And what I mean by that is I don't think the criticism was ever they can't do this, they're not capable of doing this. I think the criticism was more, they have all this talent. We've seen them do it. Why aren't they passing the ball as effectively? And I think that's an important distinction to make. And I understand, I can only imagine the athlete psychology. And I know Vinny put you in that yesterday on the show. I enjoyed the post-game show. And part of the athlete psychology is, as Jalen said, like, oh, is that what you wanted? Or, I like proving people wrong. I like being doubted. I don't think that I know now Nick Sirianni has his doubters. We've heard that. Jalen Hurts has his doubters. We've heard that. But I think last week in particular, the criticism was not so much that they can't pass the ball. The criticism is, why aren't they passing the ball well? And they answered that accordingly yesterday. And it's just all around, like, the defense. I'm real impressed with their performance watching it back. I know we'll have topics we'll get into there in terms of some standout players. I thought the running game was, in a utilitarian way, solid. It wasn't great, but look, they did better than Pittsburgh usually allows this year. And they weren't able to get some big chunk runs, but they were able to move the sticks on a few of those runs. I thought the offensive line, for the most part, had a good game. I thought that just so many parts of the game. I mean, the only thing that I'd look at in that game yesterday and say you need to clean up is I thought they had 2 sloppy turnovers, right? I thought they had 2 fumbles that weren't like course of game fumbles, things that will be corrected. Now, I trust Jalen Hurts as a ball handler. Cooper DeJean, we'll see. You kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. He's young over time here. But I view this like there aren't many areas of this team where I say they need to fix this going into the playoffs.
I think I think there are no real concerns about the current Eagles. All of the concerns are about, like, what ifs.
Sure.
It's about, like, the attrition on Saquon and on Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith as they play all these snaps, and just hoping to ward off the injury bug. But, like, as presently constructed right now, they have answered sort of all the big questions. I mean, they have played some of the best teams in football. They have won in different ways. They have won at home and on the road. Arguably looked better on the road. And this one thing that was the worst part of the team, was the passing game. And yesterday, against the best defense they've played all year, they looked really good. And they did it by getting back to some of those easy button basics. And I look forward to getting the full film breakdown from Fran tomorrow. But one of the little things that they leaned into, and I know you have this on your rundown as well, Zach, is empty. They went empty in this game much more than they had basically all season long. They had 10 snaps in empty, which was tied for the most for any game this season. You go all the way back to week 2. To compare it, the last 2 weeks before this combined, they had 3 snaps in empty. Now, some of that is because this was a game in which they were passing more, and so when they are passing more, they're going to do that a little bit more. And obviously, that coincides with Jalen talking about they changed their identity and became a running team, and maybe they did it a little bit less. But it was super effective yesterday. Jalen Hurts on those 10 dropbacks, 7 of 9 for 116 yards, and then also had that 23-yard draw that they had, so over 130 yards total. 4 of those completions, of those 7 completions, went for 20-plus yards. It was super effective yesterday against the Steelers. A bit of an odd statistical thing for the Eagles yesterday. Their longest play of the game was 23 yards, but they had 8 plays that gained between 20 and 23 yards, just like chunk play after chunk play. It was really impressive.
Exactly. And a number of them were yards after the catch, like creating yards after the catch, as opposed to the air yards, if you will. I was really impressed by empty. I think if we can have a PHLY flex here, like this is why we're so lucky to have Fran on the show, for so many reasons. But like Fran gave the answers to the test. And one of the things Fran talked about last week was with the personnel that Pittsburgh has on the defensive front, he wanted to see how the Eagles were going to like match up against it, because you knew Pittsburgh wanted certain personnel packages on the field, and they have those heavy fronts, and you knew they were going to have packages to really try to stymie the run. And so what the Eagles answered that by spreading it out. When they went empty, Saquon was, he was out wide. There were, I think, 2 plays in the first half, because you watched the game with me in the first half where you turn to me and you say, what are the odds Saquon motions into the backfield here? And he didn't motion into the backfield because like this was part of what the Eagles were trying to do, to create space, to take advantage of the personnel that Pittsburgh had on the field. And
on the flip side, I will tell you, watching the game with Fran, there was the long Jalen Hurts run as Saquon Barkley is motioning out of the backfield and the linebackers following him. Before the ball snapped, Fran just goes draw, and it's a big one. He's like, you knew exactly what was coming.
Yeah. So that's awesome about Fran. And so we talk about empty. There's a few things there, and look, I don't want to take the words out of Fran's mouth. He said this on the postgame show. It allows you to get answers to the test. Like the defense has to show themselves. It allows Jalen to operate quickly. It often allows your wide receivers to get in one-on-one coverage, or even, DeVonta said after the game, every third down they were playing cover 2, right? So you kind of get those answers quickly about what the opponent's going to do, and they were especially effective on third down out of empty. The numbers were in my piece today on PHLY.com. And if you just look at the yardage they had more passing yards out of empty in this game than the past 7 games combined, which is staggering to think about. And the Eagles don't have, when you think about empty sometimes, and especially at the college level, you think about teams that have like 4 or 5 wide receivers, and they're going to challenge you so many different ways. When the Eagles do it, it's not like the opponents are really worried about Jahan Dotson or Johnny Wilson beating them, or even Grant Calcaterra. But it allows Jalen to operate quickly. It spreads out the defense. It creates space. So I thought it was an effective schematic approach from Kellen Moore, and it paid dividends yesterday.
Yeah, I thought the framing from Jalen, like the watering the passing game aside, it does make you curious. Like, okay, they could put a game plan together based on knowing that this is a game in which they're going to need to pass. Why is it difficult to incorporate that stuff when it's not the focal point of the game plan?
You're asking me.
I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No,
I don't think
yeah,
you
no.
have the answer either. But
I wish
it's
I
just
did.
what makes it's what comes to mind. Like, why can't we have both?
Yeah, and it's a great it's a great question, and it kind of goes to the theme of last week is that uh, I don't want to be a broken record, but there was the thought like, why can't you do this more often?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the use your term, the easy button plays. Why the final drive, that 21-yard drive, and I get it's really eight. I'm sorry, not 21-yard, 21 play drive. The 18. It's an 18 play drive and then 3 kneel downs. Although they were at play 19 when it was first down at the 8-yard line, so in theory they either would have scored or they would have. It still would have been a 21 play drive, right? So on that drive, you kind of saw some of these either easy button plays we're talking about, or these conversation pieces where they had a number of third downs there. You can't have a 21 play drive without going to third down. I think about on the first third down of that drive, a past AJ Brown. Like when you get your playmakers the ball in space, when you trust these guys, when you talk about, we make a big deal about targets, and I thought the stat you brought up last week was critical. It told the story of AJ Brown, why you need to get AJ Brown the ball is that for as good as Saquon Barkley is, like AJ Brown gets more yards per target than Saquon Barkley gets yards per rush. So in theory, yeah. So if you're targeting AJ Brown, good things are going to happen. And we saw that yesterday in terms of, and the same thing with DeVonta Smith, that why aren't there more games when these guys are getting double-digit targets? And I get it. You're playing from ahead. Some games call for the run. You're playing the Giants. You can hand the ball to Saquon over and over and over again. You don't need to pass it 30 times. And as Jalen Hurts has said, and as Nick Sirianni said in his post-game speech, sometimes you can run, sometimes you pass. You have to be able to do, they can do both. The latter, they haven't been able to do as effectively until yesterday. The fact that they did it against, as you said on the post-game show, the best defense they're going to see for the rest of the regular season, shows Eagles fans that there's no weakness. Like there's no, all right, force them to do this. If you're the opposing coach and you say, we're going to take Saquon out of the game, or we're going to really focus on, we're going to stack the box, we're going to bottle up the run, and we're going to have Jalen Hurts beat you. Well, Jalen Hurts beat you yesterday. I thought Jalen Hurts, that was a 2022 performance when you look at the combination of the passing, the running, and just the command of the game. That was an MVP performance from a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean the completion to DeVonta where he steps up in the pocket and looks like he's going to scramble and then throws it to DeVonta is just frankly a play that we have not seen him make this year.
Sure.
There were a handful of plays like that in this game where I think you're right. Like it was a bit of a dial back to 2022.
And look, that's that offense was so much fun to watch. What they didn't have that year. I mean, I say this in jest to you, a real running back, but no, they didn't have Saquon Barkley as the running back. And what they didn't have they didn't have the secondary that the Eagles. Well, actually, that's not true. They had. Look, James Bradbury was the second team All-Pro. I don't know. They just weren't as solid as a defense all around. I thought this defense.
I was having this conversation on the ALLCITY NFL show today because I was on with Bo Brack, who covers the Cardinals, and I said this is the best defense I've ever covered, and he said, well, what about that Jonathan Gannon defense in 2022? He knows that team had 70 sacks or whatever, and that defense was awesome, but it's just not close. I mean that defense was a front running defense, right? They were built to take advantage of all those leads they had in the fourth quarter. They were able to tee off. You could go player for player and argue that defense was more talented than this defense.
I would.
And I think I think that would be a fair argument. And I think it would probably be right. But this defense is just, it can do so many different things. And for all the things that we've talked about, like that schedule of opposing offenses that defense played in 2022 was like the schedule that the Eagles have played opposing defenses this year. It was very easy.
Yeah, and on the topic of the, because I know we need to take a break, but on the topic of this defense, I've had this conversation with with people who say like what does this defense do really well? And it's like they're just so
Everything.
sound. Yeah.
It's
But
they just do everything well.
yeah, but like they're a meat and potatoes defense in the sense that they tackle well, they cover well, okay? They're disciplined. So that's
They
the
rush
part of
pretty
this.
well. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but it's you don't say now. Jalen Carter's like, I think he's playing at a really high level. Zach Bond, you can make an argument that he's an All Pro player this year, but it's not as if you say this guy's gonna be the defensive player of the year. Like Hassan Reddick was worthy of defensive player of the year consideration in 2022. What they do is just all three levels. They play hard, they play tough, they play together. That's the part of it here. When I say meat and potatoes, it's because you have to watch them every week to appreciate it. Like you can't go deep on this team. It feels like they communicate well on all three levels. They play with each other. It's really a credit to Vic Fangio.
Let's do it real quick. So Hassan Reddick over whoever the top edge rusher on this team is. So that's one.
Josh Sweat, but you probably have to do Sweat for Sweat. So you'll do Hassan Reddick versus Nolan Smith, and you go Hassan Reddick. We'll get to Nolan Smith in a bit.
But then you take that year's Sweat. Although I do have to say we will talk about it after the break. But Josh Sweat deserves his flowers for his consistency this year.
Yes.
He's been very effective. But that's 2-0. You go Carter this year, and then probably Hargrave that year for the other spot. So 3-1 on the defensive line. Do you take both of these linebackers? Or do you do TJ Edwards and Zach Bond?
Yeah, probably. I would probably split the difference, and I think N'Kobe's having a good year. But let's split the difference.
So 4-2, but then I think it might. Slay is the one where you could go Slay 22. You probably do just
you go Slay 22.
He's healthier, so that gets it to 5. But then I think the rest. No, because CJ Gardner-Johnson from that year was better than CJ Gardner-Johnson from this year. So that gets them to 6. But then I think you go Quinyon over Bradbury.
Even though Bradbury was really
Eugene over Avante and Blankenship over Marcus Epps, probably. So
would you go Blankenship over Epps?
I think so.
Okay.
I like Marcus Epps a lot, but I think Reed Blankenship's been very good this year.
Okay. And then I thought that defense that defense had I would take
the defensive line was deeper too.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, like I would take Brandon Graham 2022 over Brandon Graham 2024, although Brandon was playing deep. But
I don't know. This Brandon Graham's pretty good too. But
he's not. He the Eagles go 3 guys now. They had Derek Barnett as well. No, Barnett got hurt that year, 2022. So yeah, I mean, I look at this and I say
Thomas Booker over Dominican Sue.
Yeah, I mean, I would take Jay Alexander over Robert Quinn. So that was the 4th edge rusher there. Yeah. But yeah, I think that defense was more talented. I think this defense is better.
Well, now I wasn't going to ask this, but people are going to now want me to ask you which coordinator would you take?
I would go Vic Fangio.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Do you think that Vic Fangio is getting enough credit for the Eagles season?
Oh, I think Vic Fangio is getting a lot of credit. Now, you say, and I'm getting real deep here. This is like a conversation that I've had with, people inside the building when they say, you guys, referring to the media. And I'm like, well, who are you referring to? Are you referring to talk radio? Are you referring to the beat writers? Are you referring to podcasters? Are you referring to national media? Like there's so many different ways of framing it. I think anyone who listens to this show knows that Vic Fangio, like the credit we give Vic Fangio for the scheme, for the game plan, for just the adult in the room component has just, I think now nationally is Vic Fangio getting that type of credit?
Yeah,
probably not.
In the chat saying that he's probably not getting it nationally. They think.
Yeah,
I think it's probably fair.
Yeah, probably not. For the reason I said, because this Eagles defense, I don't think it's not a sexy defense in the way that you don't have that double-digit sack guy.
It sounds like an interesting holiday idea is a calendar of sexy Vic Fangio pictures.
I don't know.
It's all just different. It's all just different shots up his nose from the coaching booth.
Exactly. That was a great question you asked.
Yeah, we should work on that. That's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not a sexy defense in the sense that I don't think like the NFL fan in Des Moines can tell you like 8 starters on this defense or 5 starters on this defense or whatever it may be. Whereas, when the Pro Bowl comes out in 2 weeks, that defense had like 6 guys voted, 5 guys voted in, whatever it was.
Right.
I don't know how many are going to get in this year. But yes, Vic Fangio has just been outstanding.
I think 3. I think they got 3 guys who might go to the Pro Bowl. Carter and Bond for sure, and then maybe Quinyon, right?
Carter, Bond, Quinyon. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Probably it. Yeah.
Probably it. Maybe Sweat with a sack or 2 more, but yeah.
Potentially. All right. Much to discuss moving forward, but we got to take a little break to hear from our sponsors. Now we're going to talk about coaching coming up. We've talked about Vic Fangio. We got to give Nick Sirianni his flowers as well. And we all know how hard it is to win without proper coaching. If you've got kids, TrueMark has the ultimate playbook for teaching financial responsibility with a free Greenlight account. The Greenlight app is changing the game, helping kids and teens learn how to earn, save, and spend wisely. They can set up savings goals, track their spending, and even get an allowance all right there in the Greenlight app. And here's the really cool part. Each kid gets their own debit card, so they can make purchases and learn real-world money skills while you stay in control from your phone. You get peace of mind, and they get the freedom to make smart decisions with their money. It's like coaching your kid through their very own financial game, and for TrueMark Financial members, it's gratis. Gratis? Gratis. It's free. With the holidays right around the corner, now is the perfect time to introduce your kids to Greenlight. Get signed up today. Visit truemark.com/Greenlight for more information. That's TRUMARK.com/Greenlight. One word. Over to you, Mr. Berman.
While the Eagles are hunting down a ring, you can too. Let me tell you about Golden Nugget Jewelers. They're on Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. They're family owned and operated since 1987. If you're getting engaged like Julia just did, or you're maybe looking for a nice Christmas present, holiday present, anniversary present, they have a wide assortment of rings and wedding bands to fit anyone's style. Receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purpose. Now, you obviously wouldn't get the ring or the wedding band for Christmas, but they don't just have wedding jewelry. That's what I wanted to emphasize. You can find watches, diamond necklace, diamond bracelets, earrings, and more over at Golden Nugget Jewelers. Like I said, Chestnut and 8th in downtown Philly. I usually say 8th and Chestnut. You deserve an expert and the best price. Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. Head over to goldennuggetjewelers.com to learn more.
A lot of talk about those beautiful baby blues that you're rocking today, Zach.
My eyes.
People in the chat, very, very smitten with those orbs of yours.
It's nice of them to say. It's the same eyes I have every day. But I appreciate the sentiment, and I'm just wide-eyed doing this show. I enjoy it.
Okay. All right. We talked about Vic. Let's talk about Nick Sirianni. After the tumult of last week in the building, for them to answer the way that they did, and even to bounce back within that game after the 2 fumbles, how much credit do you think Nick Sirianni deserves for the current state of this team?
Oh, quite a bit of credit. And look, I get that. Giving credit to Nick Sirianni is not. I don't know what you're doing right there, Bo. Giving credit to Nick Sirianni is not an endeavor that Philadelphia seems to enjoy. But look, you don't luck into 12 wins. You don't luck into like 4 consecutive playoff appearances, 3 years with double-digit wins, but we're talking about this year in particular. I think he's navigated it well, and I think so much of coaching goes on Monday to Saturday, and last week was an example. We talk about whether it's game management or scheme, game calling or scheme, all these, and these are all important. I'm not trying to dismiss any of those things, but a lot of what a head coach does is be the head coach of the football team throughout the week. How are you doing? What's your Monday message? What's your Wednesday message? What's your Saturday night message? How are you navigating personalities? How are you navigating different pitfalls? When do you know how to push? When do you know how to praise? There's so many different variables here, and I think Nick Sirianni has navigated that well. I think that whether it is the practice schedule, whether it is the messaging, whether it is working with his coaches and or the relationships he has with the leadership on
chest to chest with Clint Hurt.
Yeah, but then I just got this sent to me here at the 8:11 mark in the fourth quarter. You see Nick Sirianni and Jalen Carter hugging, so they kissed and made up, so to speak. But I think that when the job Nick Sirianni's done, look, I don't need to defend him. Like he's 12-2, and he's done it with 2 new coordinators. And look, last year was a bad collapse. There's no denying it. I said this on the postgame show. Like their down year was 11 wins and the first round of the playoffs. And his job was on the line, and he bounces back this year. And like you look at the 2 weeks where they've had, like, everything's kind of been in the crosshairs. How's he going to navigate this? How's he going to deal with it? First off, they both came off wins after the Browns win and after the Panthers win, and they both led into double-digit wins. Now, the Giants are not a very good team, but then the Steelers, a double-digit win. So I point this out as a way of saying that I think now much as it has yet to be written. Like we said this going into the year, Nick's ultimately how we determine Nick does this year is going to be based on what they do in January. It's not going to be based on September, October, November, December. But you can't get to January without doing what you're doing in September, October, November, December. And I think he has navigated this well.
When you just said much has yet to be written, for the first time it occurred to me that maybe I don't want the Eagles to win the Super Bowl because I don't know that I want to see you have to go through the book writing process again. Poor family. I
would be lying if I said that conversation has not been discussed here in the Berman household. Like is this something, is this something that you want to do? Is this something that I'm able to do? Is this something that, but she did.
And we as a family afford to go through this again.
Without like divulging too much. She did say at one point, who am I kidding? I know who I married. So, so it's kind of, sometimes it's like, you feel like you're on, you're on a freight train and you don't even have control over it.
Oh man, I'm terrified for you now. This is tough. Oh man. That has honestly completely changed the stakes of the season. As far as I'm concerned.
No. It's nothing. I'm honestly just focused on like how good our shows are going to be in the postseason. How good, the like the fact that I mean we got the best host in the city. We got Fran, who's just been incredible. Every book signing I have, every interaction I have with everyone says, you and Bo are great. I've been listening to you for X amount of years, but Fran is, Fran. It's like, all right, I get it. Fran is, it's like, he's like, it must be like what what Jalen or AJ have been felt like when everyone's like, yeah, you guys might be good, but Saquon, yeah, Saquon's the MVP. But yeah, no, this is a way of saying
I put us on that level.
I was just referring to like adding a new addition to the mix. But
well, if you want to come and share that sentiment to our faces, you can do it on Friday at Reading Terminal. We're gonna have the three of us and Adenes as well making an appearance. So looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think the Sirianni conversation it's important to remember that we're not, these coaches are not all, they don't have the same jobs, right? You can't just compare them in a vacuum, right? But for this particular assignment of being the head coach of this team that is very talented, that has a lot of organizational setup for him to follow and for him to go through those things. And in this situation where it's like, we've got Vic Fangio for you, bring in his coaching staff, work with those guys, figure out what's going to happen on offense, and lead this team, and be the vibes curator or whatever it is. There's no, how could you say anything other than the fact that he's been outstanding this year. Now, I do think that some of the game management stuff may come up in the playoffs. I'm sure that it will. We'll see how he handles it. He's been up and down this season, but in terms of like getting them ready to play on a weekly basis, they keep having these terrible first quarters, but they keep responding to getting punched in the mouth, and they've been, like the best second half team in football. And I mean, you cannot possibly argue with the results at this point.
Let me ask you this: who do you think's the best basketball coach? Or just name a really good a basketball coach you respect.
John Wooden.
Okay. So I didn't think you'd go John Wooden, but for the sake of John Wooden, when you think of John Wooden, do you think of like a great schematic advantage that he provided?
No, think about the story Bill Walton tells about the socks.
Yeah, putting on the socks the right way. Okay. When you think about who's the best baseball manager you can think of, or think of a great baseball manager. Just think of a baseball manager you respect. It could be any.
Casey Stengel.
Casey Stengel. Is it the way Casey Stengel managed his bullpen, or like a double, a double switch he does in the sixth inning, right? My point is that like football is really the only sport I feel like where the coaches that are deified are based on a schematic advantage they provide, as opposed to a leadership or cultural advantage they provide. And I think there's something to be said about you're the head coach of the football team. Like that's. But
I also think if you're thinking of coaches of that ilk who are not schematic geniuses, who are culture setters, it's a little like those guys are guys who typically have this gravitas, and like Nick is not like that. Nick is not like the grand poobah who is like setting up everything and everybody's following his direction. He's not. I mean, frankly, he's not at the top of the organizational ladder, right? Like it's a different.
Sure. He's not Mike Tomlin. Yeah, he's not Mike Tomlin in
right?
that regard. Yeah.
But he's at the job that he is assigned to do. He is doing an outstanding job.
Yeah, I just think like at the end of the it's the line we've used about trials in the past, where when the facts are on your side, argue the facts. When the law is on your side, and you argue the law. When neither's on your side, just argue. Well, in Nick's case, the facts are on his side. Like they're 12-2. He can just point to that. So at this point, the conversation might be different if let's say they face Tampa in the playoffs, and they're one and done, and it's like, oh gosh, But at this point, Nick's got the facts on his side.
Well said. All right, why don't we take our last break here and then set up for the final third, the final stanza. Well, I guess I got to tell you about Rothman. Our friends at Rothman Orthopedics. Now, nobody wants a holiday present of having to get surgery or anything like that, but you get what you get, and you don't get upset. That's what we say. If your joints are aching, if your hands are cramping, if your back is out of whack, Rothman's got you. At Rothman Orthopedics, practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 50 years. Their mission, simple: high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research. Research leading to new treatments and better outcomes. Each Rothman doc is laser focused on their specialty: hip, knee, spine, you name it. They have a team for each body part right in your backyard. The body parts are not in your backyard, I hope, but they might be able to fix that as well. So you can cross over the defense, drain those jump shots, and root for our teams like no other fans in the country. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. Rothman's 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians subspecialize in specific areas of the body and a multitude of orthopedic services, including hip, knee, spine, shoulder and elbow, foot and ankle, hand and wrist, sports medicine, physical medicine, and rehabilitation, orthopedic oncology, and trauma and fracture care. Rothman proudly serves dozens of communities across Pennsylvania and New Jersey with over 30 convenient offices, urgent cares, and walk-in centers. Year over year, Rothman consistently performs among the highest volume of hip, knee, and shoulder and ankle replacements in the country, over 60,000. And it's not just the volume, over 250,000 of new patients and consults that Rothman is most proud of, but instead it's their commitment to improving each of those patients' lives through their service and care. For more than 50 years, Rothman has participated in thousands of groundbreaking research and clinical trials with the goal of advancing knowledge, developing treatments, and improving outcomes for the benefit of their patients. Rothman Orthopedics, specialized in orthopedics, and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today.
This is always a fun time of year. Football season is, in the stretch run. It's the holiday season, but there's so much going on. We're all busy, and we're looking for ways to stress less or things to stress less about. Well, that's where I want to tell you about HelloFresh, because HelloFresh helps make mealtime manageable, saving you from searching for recipes or all that grocery shopping. Just pick your meals, and everything you need is delivered right to your door. Every HelloFresh recipe includes high-quality, sustainably sourced ingredients like produce that comes fresh from the farm. There's always something for everybody to enjoy on HelloFresh's weekly menu, with 50 chef-crafted recipes to choose from every week, plus customizable options to make your meals just the way you like them. You'll be able to easily satisfy every craving. I can tell you that big box came recently of HelloFresh, and it was great to know that I had all the ingredients there. I could save time, and I could spend that writing an article for allphly.com or preparing for our next show. With HelloFresh, cooking can be enjoyable because I have everything there. I don't need to run to the store just to get that one piece of the recipe that I might have forgotten. Get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/freeeagles. That's FREEEAGLES. It's applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, and varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/freeeagles. It's America's #1 meal kit.
Bang up job. Freegles. Jeff Freegles.
But this is 2 E's before the Eagles, so that's why I want to spell it out, because sometimes it's like they do this on the New Heights podcast, right? Where they have to. Have you ever heard of it? Okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah. They probably need some attention, but yeah, they have to spell it out sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to the Kelsey show.
Late night show, the Friday show. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'll be fun.
I agree. It's filming right by our studio too.
I know. We should make an appearance.
I would love that. Jason, if you're watching,
get naked.
I don't think that. I don't think that. That'd be a weird. That's a weird comment. I don't think that would have done it. But Jason, if you're watching right now, yeah, if you need a fill-in guest, Bo would be very entertaining on your show.
I watched Jason's performance at the Ass Cat Improv in California. Did a very nice job as the monologist. Shout out to the Spoon Man.
So I'm sorry for my ignorance. What's a monologist?
Someone who gives a monologue.
Okay, gotcha.
I don't remember the context. I'm sorry to bring this up. I keep seeing Nipples Berman in the chat. I don't remember the context of when Nipples Berman was a thing.
Yeah, I don't either, and it makes me very uncomfortable.
Okay, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
How concerned are you? Do you think we're going to see like a usage change over the next 3 weeks or so? What are your expectations?
Yeah. So one thing here, by the way, that now I know teammates kind of puff guys up after games. I get what's so funny.
I can't remember the Nipples Berman.
Okay.
I know that it was a thing, but I don't remember when it was.
So I know guys pump others up after games, but I thought it was interesting. Lane Johnson, who tends to kind of be a truth teller. Like Lane's not usually saying something just to say it after a game. And this isn't an opinion that I've had, but I trust Lane Johnson. And he said, quote, regarding Kenny Gainwell, quote, I think he's probably the most underrated guy in the locker room. He'd be a starter anywhere else. Now, the second part of that, I don't know if he'd be a starter anywhere else, but them saying that he's the most underrated guy in the locker room. And I found that to be an interesting line. I bring this up because Saquon, who has been, MVP candidate here, he's still has a fighting chance of Eric Dickerson's record. Okay. If he doesn't, let's say he has 75 yards on Sunday and you start doing the math and you're like, that Dickerson record might be pretty difficult here. I do wonder if it makes sense to just cut back the workload a bit, knowing the playoffs are coming, knowing he's going to be a big part of what you do, or a huge part, a central part, that they might have to win games with Saquon Barkley leading them. That in that Dallas game, in that Giants game, maybe it could make sense to get Gainwell 10 touches, to get Shipley 3 touches, something like that. And Saquon doesn't have his normal workload. Am I overstating this?
I think that would be smart. I mean, I know they would love to get that record, and I know that the offensive line in particular would love to get to 2,000, and that's commendable. But yeah, I mean, if it's not coming at the expense of winning games, then I do think that they should be probably smart down the stretch here, because especially if they don't get the bye, like they're going to want to lean on Saquon more in January.
Yeah, and Saquon, he got banged up a bit yesterday. Now he says it was minor. He'll be fine. He's ready for Sunday's game. But you don't want Saquon dealing with something going into the playoffs, right? And I get it. This time of year, everyone's got something, right? Jalen Hurts had the best game of his season probably with a broken left a ring finger. But I would just, if now you hit on the head, I think that record's important to the offensive line, even if Saquon downplays the importance of it. And I think that he is team first in what he's in what he's saying. I think it's rare to have this type of opportunity where you have that possibility. And so he's got 3 games to go here. But like I said, if after the Washington game, let's say he's like 400 yards away or something like that, then you start to say, I would think about maybe mixing in Gainwell and Shipley a little bit more, just to ensure that Saquon's where you want him to be going into the playoffs.
Well, the other question is if the passing game is all of a sudden a real part of the offense again, then they don't need him as much. They don't need to ride him as much, and there aren't as many carries there for him. I mean, even yesterday he still had 19 carries, so it's not like he's not going to get his work. But the volume maybe decreases just a little bit. I think the Kenny Gainwell thing you bring up from Lane is interesting, and I think Kenny Gainwell is worth just thinking about and applauding from a human level. Like, a guy who came in, was an exciting 5th round rookie, and the arc of his career was just like sort of stagnated. And at some point, it was like, okay, everybody's ready to replace this guy, and they end up drafting a guy as high as they've ever drafted a running back in franchise history, and still he maintains his job. And in a year that is like potentially his last year with the team, a guy who everybody sort of thought of was just this level player and wasn't ever going to be better or worse than that, is having maybe not volume wise, but efficiency wise and just juice wise, the best season of his career.
Yeah, well said. And I go back to, look, Gainwell was their top running back in the playoffs in January 2023. Like after the 2022 season, he kind of overtook Miles Sanders there at the end. And even though the Eagles went and traded for Swift, like the Patriots game last year was an example. Gainwell had the opportunity to be the top running back going into the 2023 season, and it just he didn't earn it per se, right? Swift outplayed him. The Eagles went and they saw it and upgrade this offseason. Now they signed one of the best, perhaps the best running back in the NFL, one of the top 3 running backs in the NFL, more so than any point in Gainwell's career. It was not a committee. It was very much, there was the number one. Will Shipley was on his tail. Like you said, there was, say a Gainwell's in the final year of his contract. Sometimes it could be easy. I don't want to say write someone off, but say he's league average. He's just kind of here for depth. I thought he was exceptional yesterday in the role that he played. And because he had 2 plays that extended drives, 2 plays that he should have been down. He had that spin move. He broke a tackle and moves the chains. And Professor Selman, when you listen back to this, whether you do it on 3rd down or whether you do it on 2nd down, but in Gainwell's case, 3rd down, moving chains is so important because, it's the difference. They can be 4-point plays. And you saw that with Gainwell. I thought that those 2 plays he had in particular were awesome. And the other thing too, and you've said this, I've been doing shows with you for 5 years, that players know. And like when you hear the affection that players have for Gainwell, when he scored that touchdown a few weeks ago, Nick highlighted the celebration that they had with him. That doesn't happen if those players don't genuinely feel good or appreciate him. And that's what Lane said. Lane talked about kind of the way that he works. Saquon said Saquon said that Saquon gets so much credit for how strong he is. He says Gainwell squats just as much as he does. So I'll tip my cap to Gainwell, even as someone who thought Shipley was going to overtake him this year.
Aesthetically, which position do you think would be coolest to see a player with an actual tail?
Excuse me?
I was thinking about it because you said that Shipley was on Kenny's tail. And so I'm thinking about it like if a human being had like an animal tail and was a football player, which position would be coolest to watch that player?
I don't have a strong
around.
What's your answer to that?
I think edge rusher, maybe. Watch it. But I guess I think you want to see the tail run, actually. So maybe my answer is wide receiver.
Yeah, but then
you don't want to see them then get dragged down by the tail.
Yeah.
So maybe it's corner, maybe it's safety. See him roam, side to side, and then the tail starts wagging when they sniff out a screen. Maybe safety.
Okay. Yeah. All right. You should ask that. That should be a Wolf's Den. Ask the players what position would aesthetically be. I think some of those guys would look at you like you're nuts.
Well, during the Super Bowl year, I asked them because there was all the talk about the underdogs, which position would be best for a dog. But
and what did they answer?
The answers varied.
Okay.
A little shout out to Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
You want to give Zach?
Yeah.
Played almost every snap on defense yesterday.
Played almost every snap. And because this goes back to Vic being the truth teller. Vic said they're not going to mess with Sweat's snaps, right?
Mhm.
But they're giving more work to Nolan Smith, and you've seen that. I thought he was so impactful yesterday. Obviously had that sack, had a few quarterback hits, or had a quarterback
What did
hit.
you think of the dice roll celebration?
Are you a dice roller? Like, when you go to the casino, do you roll dice?
Not really.
Okay, yeah. But you play board games. What's your?
Yeah.
Is that how you roll your dice?
No, I did not get all my body into it and then roll down like that. No, that is not how I roll dice.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
playing Yahtzee at home.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to ask no one about that. I will. Yeah, no one's really. I've been impressed with him, and I thought last year he did not take that leap that I thought he was going to take. You mentioned it; he was playing snaps in the 4th preseason game, but I think he's answered the bell during the regular season. I thought yesterday was the best game that he's played. He was a menace in the backfield. You saw kind of what you like about him. I've always said with Nolan that the effort is, the effort's going to be there. For someone who was like an athletic marvel coming out of college, from the athletic testing perspective, he's what you don't kind of I don't want to say expect, but he became the try hard guy, in the sense that he's the guy who's gonna like hustle every play, chase everything down, but maybe won't wow you with his pass rush moves. But I thought his sack yesterday, he showed some juice coming around the edge. I was really impressed.
Absolutely, he did, and another player who deserves all the credit in the world for the strides he has made this season. Do you have any sense on a Bryce Huff timetable?
Good question. I don't. I mean, we're kind of nearing that right now. They haven't even started the practice window yet, so that's someone who I would imagine you would just want to get him back at practice, right? They have 3 weeks to go here. You would want to activate him just to give him this practice window. Although, if you're going to bring him back like a week or two into the playoffs, then you don't want to do that yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate this. But you are going to want to get him. You are going to want to get him on the practice field.
Speaking of Bryce Huff, notable that Joe Douglas was in the house yesterday. You think?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't dismiss it. It was like the band was back together. Andy Weidel was there with
that's right.
With the Steelers.
Is it Joe Douglas or is it Douglas Joe?
It is Joe Douglas.
Okay.
But yeah, Joe was there with Howie, which says something about. I mean, I don't know what their relationship has been over the past 5 years, but anecdotally, the fact that they're there together, Joe's relatively close to the area. North Jersey's only right down the road. But I know there's people in that building who think highly of him, and I'm curious to see where Joe ends up next year.
Well, we thank everybody who's watching on TV right now, and make sure you go to allphly.com to check out the rest of this episode. Zach, we have a super chat.
Wait. Oh, I was just going to bring up a Nolan Smith thing real quick, which is just the kind of behind the scenes. I thought a good conversation with Nolan Smith recently about. He said that he like every day here he thinks he's supposed to be on the shipyards down in Savannah, and like that's his perspective. That he says that's why he's kind of working as hard as he works, because he should be on the shipyards in Savannah. And I said, I apologize for my ignorance. Like, can you explain to me what a day is like on the shipyards in Savannah? And he was running through what that's like, being on the ships in Savannah. He did it one summer, the summer before his freshman year at Georgia, I believe it was. And he's like, never again. But he said, most of his family's doing that. They were actually on strike recently. But he has his
Power to the people.
He has like his shipyard card. So I just thought that was neat perspective. I'm always curious, like what motivates someone, what pushes you, what's your, I don't want to say what's your why. That's like a cliche, but yeah, I thought that was a cool sentiment that gave some insight into kind of who he is and where he's from.
I like that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a story.
Oh, it's in the notebook, man. It's getting ready to roll soon.
All right. By the way, how did you feel about the delivery of the DeVonta Smith Heisman ballot interview? The much hyped reveal.
It wasn't hyped. It wasn't hyped. On the 43-minute mark of the Friday show, I said, and by the way, I have Devontae's Heisman vote tomorrow.
Said, I got a treat for the diehards. You are not gonna want to miss this one.
Well, look, if you said to me, I bet he picked Travis Hunter. If I was like, actually, no, he picked Ashton Jeanty. Why would you even read the article at that point, right? So I had to give. Look, if you're paying, we've had multiple price points here. I hope you become a diehard. But if you pay to subscribe, I don't want to give you the show or I don't want to give you the article in the show. I mean, I'll tease it, but yeah, now that it's been out there, DeVonta, I've done this now. This is my third year doing this with DeVonta. I thought, if I'm being candid, I thought this was probably the least thoughtful he was about the Heisman. No, not shots fired.
You think it's because it's post Saban? He's less connected to the program and less connected to college football? Alabama's not as good.
Good question. Yeah, it's a good question. No, I just think it was a year where it was just so much harder. Now, I personally don't think it was harder. To me, like Travis Hunter would have been a no-brainer. I've never voted for the Heisman, but I watch college football and I have respect for what Gianti's done. Travis Hunter has just been outstanding. Like he won the Biletnikoff as the top wide receiver. He won the Lombardi as the top defensive player. Now he didn't win the Jim Thorpe. I know like people in Colorado are up in arms. Caleb Downs is really good too, right? It's not this like huge slight again, but he did.
Now, what did Mike Lombardi do to get those awards named after him?
I don't think it's Mike Lombardi. But Travis Hunter's been just incredible and a joy to watch.
GM of one college program, all of a sudden they're naming awards after him.
And so yeah, I too thought DeVonta would vote for him. I'm surprised when he voted for Ashton Jeanty, and but I always enjoy catching up with DeVonta, and I genuinely appreciate the fact that he's willing to share that with me every year.
Me too. I had a follow-up, but I forgot what it is. So let's check out this super chat from Santiago, who's treating Kill a Cow, who's in the chat live as a special treat. He says, Santiago says, the NFL will be a running league again with small linebackers. The classic cyclical nature of the NFL. Just when you think you've got all the answers, I change the questions.
I disagree with that. And I disagree with that because this trend of linebackers being smaller, this wasn't like last 3 years. This has been the last decade, right? And I think it's the Joe Banner math that a passing play gets you more yards than a running play, right? And so I think teams are more inclined to pass. And I think the data suggests that if you can that the best passing teams are usually the best teams. Now that said, it shouldn't be framed as either or, and I think the Eagles are an example of this. It's not like you can only be good at running or passing. And I think there are certain matchups. There are certain teams that might have smaller linebackers, and maybe they're not as good at the point of attack on the defensive line, and you want to run against that team. But then there are certain teams like the Steelers that might eat up the run. Like this, Patrick Queen's he's not a big linebacker. But is
it Patrick Queen or is it Queen Patrick?
It is Patrick Queen. So I don't like, and I always said this, I don't like framing it as like run or pass. Because you can be good at both. And if you draft well and develop well and coach well, you should be good at both.
Okay, well said. Anything else you want to get off your chest?
So these Lions injuries today, we talked about the Lions at the top of the show, but Ali McNeil's a huge one. Huge. He's
Yes, I did enjoy the text I got wondering if Howie Roseman's going to make Milton Williams take a a physical right now just so he can send the results to Tom Donahoe somewhere.
That bit will not get old, huh? David Montgomery, that's a major injury. Carlton Davis.
Now reportedly undergoing season-ending surgery. David
Is he
Montgomery.
really? Yeah. So look, they already lost their best defensive player in Aiden Hutchinson. They've been so beat up at linebacker that Jamal Adams gets signed off the street and is active for a game. They're really dealing with some tough injuries. Now they can score, and Montgomery, that injury affects you for sure, or affects them rather. They still got Gibbs and a great offensive line, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams and Sam Laporta and Jared Goff, Ben Johnson calling plays, the continuity there, you can see it. They got terrific home field advantage. But yeah, this is why, like Dan Campbell, when he was at the podium a year ago after the 49ers game, where he talked about like how hard it is to get back. And it's absolutely true. Like it is, I go back to what Jason Kelce always said about the Super Bowl hangover. And he's like, the reason why teams don't get back is because like only 2 teams make the Super Bowl and it's really hard. And you're seeing this. Now, by the way, in 2017, if you said the Eagles would lose Carson Wentz and Jason Peters and Jordan Hicks, Darren Sproul, like you would say, all right, that team's not going to make the Super Bowl. When you get to the tournament, it's can you win 4 games, or can you win 3 games if you're the top seed? And that's all it is. Can you go 3-0? It's not, are you the best team? It's, can you win this weekend, then next weekend, and then the final weekend? That said, the Lions don't look like the same team they were 8 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I should also add this too. The Eagles have 3 games to go. The Eagles have 180 minutes to go before the playoffs. And I don't say that like, I'm not saying they're going to suffer injuries, but
it's just 3 podcasts. That's all.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because every if I'm being candid here, every time I'm at a book signing or something like that, or and I ask people feedback on the show, and if they're longtime listeners, I say, how do you like the show here compared to our formal show? And one person said to me, it's the same amount of time. It's just spread over 5 shows. And I'm like, yeah, we don't do those 3-hour marathon Friday shows or Thursday shows.
Sometimes.
That is true. Sometimes. Yeah. But no, what I was saying is like, I would just say to Eagles fans, like, stay humble. If you're in the sense of it, I'm not raining on any parade, figuratively or literally. I am like, if you want to get excited about the possibility of New Orleans, be my guest. But when you talk about another team's injuries, there are 180 minutes to go, and there are a lot of spots where the Eagles can ill afford to lose players. And I heard the clip of Damian Woody and Rex Ryan talking on, I'm sorry, I probably Get Up is my guess for what the show was. I was trying to properly credit it. And Rex Ryan was saying, Rex Ryan said they're the best team, and Damian Woody said, they're the healthiest team, the Eagles. And yeah, like the Eagles haven't, they don't have the season-ending injury yet, or I'm sorry, I don't mean to say yet. They don't have the season-ending injury to like the vital cog that Detroit has. But there's a lot of football to be played, and so that's why I would say don't just appreciate where the Eagles are right now, and look forward to following this along.
If the Eagles make the Super Bowl, I will commit to 2-hour shows all week long.
I mean, that's a conversation that we need to have with Julia. That's a conversation we need to have with Fran. That's a conversation we need to have with whoever's down in New Orleans with us. I mean, we go 5. It used to be this. I remember this. This just goes to show you the evolution of us.
Don't make me say 3.
No, this shows the evolution of us. Is I remember how daunting it was when the Eagles were in the playoffs back in January 2023, and you said unilaterally, you didn't ask, you're like, we are going to do daily shows starting What I
There
forget what it
was
was.
precedent for that. They
Yeah.
need to ask because that was precedent that dated back
and then,
to with Shield.
and then I'm like, daily shows. And now it's like, hey, second week in June, you're doing daily shows. Third week in May, you're doing daily. It's like we're doing shows year round. So yeah, the daily show thing is nothing. Now you're saying 2-hour shows daily. That's
Or
a lot
I have
of
another
content.
idea.
Yeah.
If the Eagles make the Super Bowl, the off week, there will be a day during the off week when we will do a 24-hour live stream.
No, that will not happen. But what I would like
For charity.
Well, I love charity, so
You're
well,
always
I
thinking
would.
about other people.
I shouldn't have said. I meant. All right, that didn't come out the correct way. Okay. I would love us to incorporate more live shows. So I would love I can't wait for Friday. You teased it before. Oh, we got Nick coming up soon, so I gotta hustle off. But the energy of the energy in the Reading Terminal is exciting. And so yeah, if there are more live shows during the week, if you that would be awesome, just so we can see everyone out in person.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Back tomorrow, 2:00, the Duff Man to give us the scoop from the tape. Look forward to that. We're going to talk to Nick Sirianni in just a minute. Let you know what he says. And otherwise, that's all we got. Thanks to Julia for making it happen. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.